deputies and working a lot of overtime, and they're tired of working a lot of overtime.
Concerns from law enforcement along the southern border, and tonight Arizona calls in the state's National Guard. Good evening. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs says she can't wait for the federal government to send more resources. So today she signed an executive order to get Arizona National Guard troops working the border as a growing number of migrants arrive. Governor Hobbs says the troops will work to reopen the Lukeville port of entry, shut down for nearly 2 weeks. That crossing was closed to traffic to shift resources toward processing arriving migrants. The closure has hurt many nearby businesses. The National Guard call-up comes as the U.S. Senate works to reach a deal on border security. The White House wants Congress to approve a $110 billion package to address issues at the border and provide wartime aid to Ukraine and Israel. Border security is the sticking point in those negotiations, with Republicans calling for tougher asylum restrictions. The White House says it's negotiating with both parties.
If Republicans are serious about getting something done, they should not be so eager to go home. This may be our last best chance to get this legislation done.
We've been doing this for 90 days. There is no legislative text. I will gladly vote no to a bad deal next week. I am not going to be pressed to do something that doesn't make sense.
And at the Arizona State Capitol today, Governor Hobbs met with the governor of the state of Sonora, Mexico, to discuss the closure at the Lukeville border crossing. Now we turn to new figures showing homelessness across the country is at its highest level ever. A report released today by the Department of Housing and Urban Development shows homelessness is up about 12% since last year. And the West Coast is greatly affected by the crisis. These are the states with the highest percentage of their population experiencing homelessness. California ranks #1, followed by Oregon, Hawaii, Arizona, and Nevada. For more, we're joined tonight by Dr. Margot Kuchel, the Division Chief of UCSF's Center for Vulnerable Populations. We appreciate the time. This analysis found the dramatic increase is driven in large part by people becoming homeless for the first time. What is driving that trend?
You know, what's driving the trend is really the cost of housing is just too high. People simply cannot afford their housing. I think you combine that with pandemic relief having expired. We see the end of the eviction moratoria. People were still behind in their rent. Combine that with the rising cost of groceries and all the pressures on people. People simply cannot afford to live in housing.
Because we saw during the pandemic, the numbers in terms of homelessness all across the country remained relatively flat. But once that assistance began to go away, we are seeing this spike. Do you believe that this is going to continue in this way?
I mean, absent us seeing it as the crisis that it is, we saw during the pandemic that when we need to muster a lot of resources, we can. And when we put a lot of federal resources into this problem, we can slow it down and even reverse it. But without those federal resources, it's hard to see us turning the tide. And I think that that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing the expiration of that unprecedented amount, infusion of help, infusion of rental assistance, emergency rental assistance. This is a crisis where we know what to do. We really know that things like rental vouchers end homelessness. You know, we can decrease the cost of housing. We can decrease that gap between people's incomes and the cost of housing. We can end homelessness. A lot of this increase was amongst families. These are parents with kids who simply got priced out. One small disruption, their hours got cut. Their kid got sick and they had a big emergency department bill. Something like that happened and it just pushed them over the edge and out into the streets.
Obviously, we know California and the West Coast are really struggling, obviously, with the homelessness crisis here. I want to put up on the screen here some of the major cities that saw the largest increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness in this country since last year. And you can see several West Coast cities, Los Angeles, San Diego, and Denver, saw those significant jumps year over year. Why is the problem so pronounced here in the West?
You know, in the West, we have some of the worst crisis in terms of the disconnect between the cost of housing and people's ability to pay for it. For instance, in California, we have only 24 units of housing that are affordable and available for every 100 extremely low-income households. What this isn't is masses of people rushing into California. Our big statewide study showed that 90% of those experiencing homelessness in California lost their stable housing in California. Those experiencing homelessness in California are Californians. We just have this huge disconnect between the cost of our housing and low-income people's ability to afford it.
All right, so if what we saw from last year to this year, this increase is in large part driven by people becoming homeless for the first time, it feels like the response to this crisis can't just be about trying to get people off the streets, but it has to also be about keeping people from winding up on the streets. What do we know about the kinds of programs that work to identify and support people who are sort of on the edge there, struggling financially and at risk of losing their homes?
This is where emergency rental assistance and rental vouchers or permanent rental assistance play a big role. We saw in the pandemic, there was federal dollars. So if someone was behind in their rent, they could get a one-time cash payment and catch back up on that rent, keep their job, and keep in that house. We know that for many people, though, what they need is that permanent voucher. And right now, only 1 in 4 people who meet the strict criteria of qualifying for a housing choice voucher receive it. San Francisco opened up our wait list for the first time in a decade. About 60,000 people signed up. 6,500 will win the opportunity to be on the wait list and to get a voucher in the next few years. So we know that if we can get money to people when they're in crisis, we can keep them out of being homeless. But over the long term, many people are going to need long-term rental assistance to stay in their housing, to keep their jobs, to keep their kids safe, and to keep homelessness numbers down.
And finally, here as we wrap up, do you believe that these dramatic numbers, this dramatic increase in homelessness that we see in these figures here, is going to prompt policy changes across the board?
I really hope so. I mean, I'm hoping that the specter of all these moms with kids out on the street will move Congress. That's what we really need. We need Congress to recognize it as the crisis as it is. These increases we're seeing all across the country, rural areas, urban areas, suburban areas, west, east, north, south, everywhere. What we really need is for action because, frankly, the price of inaction is intolerable.
Dr. Margot Kuchel with UCSF. We appreciate the time, as always. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, when you focus on the figures by state, you'll notice the 2 states here in the West have experienced some of the largest increases in the homeless population compared with last year. California ranks 2nd, right after New York. Florida comes in 3rd. Colorado and Massachusetts round out the top 5. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston is hoping to clear out as many as 7 encampments by the end of this year. He says the shutdown of those encampments will happen as the city works to secure other places for people to stay. The city is focused on converting hotel units and creating communities with tiny homes. In Tacoma, Washington, jurors are continuing to deliberate the fate of 3 police officers, all charged in the death of Manuel Ellis. A.J. Janavel spoke with a legal expert about what the outcomes of this historic case could be.
Local legal expert Mark Lindquist says this trial has been different due to all of the controversy within the courtroom. He says even though we could get answers as early as Monday, he expects this jury to deliberate for quite some time. Lindquist says there are several outcomes we could see. The jury could choose to convict the officers, acquit the officers, or some combination of the two.
Jurors take their oath incredibly seriously. This is going to take time. You've got 12 different personalities locked in a room together all day, and they are going to argue, fight a little, some might even cry. It's going to take them, I would say, days, maybe weeks, and I think there's a high likelihood that they're going to come back hung. And I think the first time that happens, the judge is going to say, go back and try harder.
He says this has been a long trial with a lot of testimonies, and the jury has a big decision to make.
As to the murder charges, the evidence is likely not strong enough for a conviction.
Whether these officers are found guilty or not, I just want something different to happen so that what happened here never has to happen again.
Jamaica Scott is a newly elected Tacoma council member. She also is an organizer with the Tacoma Action Collective. For years, she's worked to get attention on the Ellis case. She tells me these 2 months have been difficult for family and friends of Ellis.
I wish that there were a lot of ways in which it could have gone differently. Just in there felt like there was kind of a lack of respect and a lack of care and a lack of understanding that Manny's actually a victim here. It felt very much like he was on trial.
I also reached out to the Tacoma Police Union to speak on the case. However, I never heard back. I also reached out to the defense's attorneys as well as the prosecution's attorneys to see if they had any comment or thoughts as the jury deliberates. Both sides told me they will wait for that verdict to come out before they release any statements. You can count on continued coverage. Reporting here in Tacoma, I'm AJ Janovel, Fox 13 News.
2 schools in Washington were forced to close today following prank reports about a gunman and other concerning threats. Police first got 911 calls saying there was a gunman at Nelson Middle School in Renton, south of Seattle. But when officers responded, they did not find a suspect or a gun. Authorities determined the threat was a hoax. But in a matter of hours, thousands of students' safety was threatened once again.
Online, we were alerted to additional threats against both Nelson Middle School and Renton High School. They were concerning enough that our investigators contacted the Renton School District, and that's when the decision was made to go ahead and close those schools.
Police say they do have a suspect in custody tonight. They have not released his identity, but they have said he is a minor. And there were 2 similar threats to schools in Los Angeles today. First, El Segundo High School went into lockdown just before 9 o'clock this morning after reports of a possible gunman on that campus. However, authorities say they didn't find a weapon or any possible suspects. All students were released from school later in the afternoon. The high school's Winter Sing event had to be canceled because of this situation. School officials are planning to resume classes on Monday. And Washington Preparatory High School in L.A. also went into lockdown when a suspect ran onto the campus with a gun. This happened after a crash near the school. It's unclear if authorities took the suspect into custody. The school's lockdown was lifted this afternoon, and parents were reunited with their students right outside of that school.
And in weather, here's a live view in Santa Monica, Southern California. A nice mild weekend, but some changes next week. And we're talking about possibly some rain. We'll have more in your forecast coming up.
Also coming up tonight, Starbucks may be forced to reopen some of its stores. Tonight, how a complaint filed by federal regulators plays into all this. Also, forget the sleigh. Santa has a new ride. We'll explain why he's getting around one West Coast city in a garbage truck. Starbucks could be forced to reopen 23 of its stores that were shut down. Federal labor regulators claim those stores were closed to suppress employees' union organizing efforts. At least 7 of the 23 stores had already unionized. A complaint issued by the National Labor Relations Board is calling for those stores to reopen and employees to be compensated for the loss of earnings that resulted from the closures. This case is set to go before an administrative judge next summer. The governor of Hawaii wants Maui vacation rentals to be turned into housing for wildfire survivors. More than 6,000 residents of Maui are still living in hotels for more than 4 months after the deadly wildfire that destroyed much of the town of Lahaina. The governor, Josh Green, wants at least 3,000 condos and homes used as rentals to go to residents. Some of them have had to move between hotels several times. There are at least 12,000 legal short-term rentals on the island of Maui.
If we get fortunate and get, say, extra help from Airbnb, which is what our human services team is doing, we'll go with a large number of units. We've asked them to waive any of the cancellation fees, which we can do under the emergency proclamation.
Governor Green said a combination of tax incentives and rent subsidies from FEMA should also help property owners with those costs. The holiday travel rush is picking up just as storms are headed for the West Coast. This is a live look tonight at Los Angeles International Airport, where conditions are calm. But another round of strong Santa Ana winds is going to hit Southern California this weekend, and then rain is going to make a comeback all across the West. KTVU meteorologist Mark Tamayo is tracking the conditions that do have the potential to kind of complicate people's holiday travel plans as we move toward Christmas.
That's right, Alex. Yeah, we're talking about a pattern change that will ultimately bring in some rainfall across a good portion of California, including Southern California. But in the short term, as you mentioned, those winds are up. We do not have any high wind warnings, anything like that, but still gusts could be topping 30 to 40 miles an hour. And with that pattern, of course, with the Santa Ana wind, it's a dry pattern that also increases the fire danger. So we'll be watching out for that into the weekend. But as you can see into next week, this is the storm we are watching. We'll put this into motion, and this will translate to some rainfall for San Francisco, at least the possibility of some rain on Sunday, but probably a better bet as we put this model into motion into Monday. And that rain will expand across the state to the north and also down toward possibly Southern California and even up in the Pacific Northwest. And there is another storm offshore that could factor in the forecast after that first one. In Seattle today, you can see some cloud cover, partly cloudy skies, temperature in the lower 50s. San Francisco, some hazy skies with some scattered high clouds out there. Temperatures in the lower 60s, and a beautiful day in Denver. You can see temperature in the lower 50s, actually fairly mild this afternoon. Right now, it is 35 degrees in Denver. Seattle, 43. San Francisco in the upper 50s, and still a mild Friday night in Los Angeles, 65, and Palm Springs, Phoenix right now checking in, 63 degrees. So it's a quiet Saturday forecast. No real rainfall to speak of. A dry pattern up in Seattle tomorrow. Temperatures in the 40s. In Denver, temperatures could be in the lower 50s. Lots of sunshine for San Francisco, and sunny and mild for Southern California. And also out toward Phoenix, temperatures will be in the 70s. But here is that system we're watching offshore, and that will bump up the rain chances somewhat into Sunday, but especially into early next week. So here's kind of the breakdown. As you can see, we have a sun-cloud mix in Seattle this weekend. San Francisco, we bring in the rain cloud, a chance on Sunday, but a better bet into early next week for Monday. Maybe some rain chances for Los Angeles by Monday as well. But in the meantime, look at those mild temperatures. We're talking about holiday shopping and temperatures in the 70s, maybe even close to 80 degrees in Phoenix as we head into the weekend. So fairly warm over the next few days. We could be talking about those raindrops for next week, Alex.
Yeah, but some good shopping weather in the meantime in Arizona. Mark, thank you. California Governor Gavin Newsom is defending his state's pilot program, which is designed to compel people with severe mental illness into treatment. KCRA 3's Ashley Zavala has more tonight on the governor's harsh words for counties that don't want to take part in the Care Court program.
They have to recognize people are dying on their watch.
Governor Gavin Newsom scolding the majority of California counties. He's frustrated they're waiting a year or two to start using a new law that makes it easier for counties to force people into mental health or drug addiction treatment.
We cannot wait till 2026. Can't wait till 2025 on the conservatorship reform. People literally will lose their lives.
Sacramento County's Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to wait a year to start using the new law.
Right now, I think if we were to implement this law overnight, we have two options, jail and the ER, and neither one is necessarily going to help.
County leaders support the law, but they say they need time, considering they've never been able to do this for people addicted to drugs, and it will require a whole new system. This all comes as California faces a significant budget shortfall that will likely mean cuts to key services. But Newsom says mental health and homelessness programs are safe.
The programs themselves won't be significantly impacted.
So we are very concerned as counties, but we also trust what the governor is saying, that his investments are solid.
In Sacramento, Ashley Zavala, KCRA 3 News.
Up next on West Coast Wrap, people moving out of California are boosting Las Vegas's population. Coming up tonight, why many people feel like it's the best place to build a future. Plus, we'll introduce you to the sanitation worker who's hauling away trash and delivering holiday cheer. A mix of fog and wildlife put on quite a show in Mount Rainier National Park this week. Take a look at these newly released images captured on Monday. National Park workers say elk commonly move to lower elevations as snow begins to accumulate. Fewer than 4,000 elk spend winter in the park. After cutting its summer season short because of storm damage, one of Nevada's top ski destinations is reopening its slopes tomorrow. Lee Canyon Resort was virtually inaccessible after Tropical Storm Hillary covered that property in mud this past August. But after a lot of cleanup and restoration, Lee Canyon is ready to reopen for the winter. Guests will also be able to enjoy some new additions to the resort made possible by a multi-million-dollar renovation. It is no secret California is an expensive place to live, and many people who are moving out of the state are looking to head somewhere that's more affordable. Fox 5's Mike Allen spoke with one of the many Californians making the move to Las Vegas.
I recently took a position with a tech company that deals in turfgrass, sports fields management.
Alex Opgenorth lived in Los Angeles for 3 years until this past spring and is currently back home in Wisconsin, getting ready to move here.
Las Vegas is just a really good central location for the Southwest region that I'm going to be covering.
He's not alone. People moving to Las Vegas from LA make up most of the out-of-state migration here, according to Redfin. Zooming out a bit, I also looked at Census Bureau data, which tracks state-to-state migration. I found that over the last 6 years of data, there's been a steady increase in the amount of people coming to the Silver State from the Golden State, with a big spike coming during the COVID pandemic. These numbers represent about 7% of the total amount of people moving out of California and 40% of the people moving to Nevada from other states. A big incentive to make that move, it's a lot less expensive here.
Just cost of living in Los Angeles kind of getting to a point where it was hard to justify staying there, so started to look elsewhere.
Arts and entertainment were also big attractions for Opgenorth, but the surrounding landscape was what really sold him.
Really the big thing that's attractive to me in Las Vegas is the outdoor community. Very involved with backpacking, camping, hiking, rock climbing.
And that was Fox 5's Mike Allen reporting tonight. The man he spoke with for the story says moving to Las Vegas also makes it easier for him to see his family in Wisconsin with more direct flights from the Las Vegas airport, something he says he didn't have flying out of L.A. A sanitation worker in Washington state is bringing some holiday joy on his route. Waste management driver Nick Greer is also filling the role of St. Nick this holiday season. Greer has been dressing as Santa for 17 years, giving treats to children and to pets, but he says it's the parents who are often most excited to see him.
Adults' faces, not even his kids. His kids are always going to be happy about it. It's the adults that come out and they'll stop me, want to take a picture. Like they're not even, they're not even the customers. They'll stop on the side of the road. Hey, can I get a picture? Yeah, sure, no problem. Let's get a picture. It makes them happy just seeing, because they're reverted back to being kids again.
Never too old to get that picture with Santa. Greer says his mother sewed that Santa suit for him and that wearing it helps everyone to get into the holiday spirit. No doubt about that. That does it for West Coast Wrap tonight. We appreciate you watching. You can always stay up to date on all the stories we're covering at westcoastwrap.com. And a reminder tonight, you can stream all of our shows right there on your smart TV by downloading the Fox Local app. Have a great night. We'll see you back here next week.